Howdy, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining me. June 8th, um, 8th episode for the month. Keeping this rolling. Um, yeah, this is going to be a fun one. As you can see by the thumbnail, $5 million bounty for what? For dinosaur? Giant lizard in Africa? Hmm. We've done a lot of Titan stuff and giant animals surviving, you know, whatever cataclysms may have taken out the majority of their ancestors, bringing the time frame a little bit closer and blending the man walked with beast narratives. And yeah, had a great um, live chat with Dr. Longo last night. So if you haven't seen that, check it out. It's in my lives tab. Fantastic, fantastic guest we had on. Topher talked about geopolymers. We covered the gamut. We talked about a lot of different things, and definitely won't be the last time that we do a show with Topher. It was fantastic. So if you haven't seen that, check it out. And yeah, let's jump right in. Again, thank you so much for being here. This is going to be a good one. "36 feet of neck on shoulders, 20 feet high." This is a DC newspaper, Washington Herald, 1914. What's newest that's found has and are going. This is a weird. That's what's newest found. Gigantosaurus has and now the scientists are going to search for a live one in Africa's swamps. Suppose a Gigantosaurus with a length of 100 feet and a height of 20 feet at the shoulders should come walking along the main street of the town. Wouldn't it cause a little excitement? Each of his feet could easily cover a streetcar and smash it, and its passengers to a state beyond recognition. He could easily look over the top of an 8-story building without straining his neck in the least. He could easily, in his playfulness, push over a 2 or 3-story house or building without any effort at all. And if he took it into his head, let's- there we go. And if he took it into his head to roll over on his back while the crowds were gazing in awe at him, there would be something more than 100 people who would never know what happened to them. It isn't probable that a Gigantosaurus will come to town, but it is within the realms of possibility. The Gigantosauri, like the fools, are not all dead yet, it seems. If the word of Charles Brooks, an explorer and scientist, and of Carl Hagensbach, the animal dealer, is to be believed, there are Gigantosauri still loose in the dark, damp, sultry heart of Africa. If they are not Gigantosauri, they are animals equally as great and fierce. And almost any day now, one of them will be shot, lassoed, or trapped and brought to America to push over a building or two. Now, why I love these is, if you've been following my work for a while, often I make the relation that truth is stranger than fiction. And a lot of these Hollywood stories come from old, real stories. And as a child who grew up in the 80s and 90s, Jurassic Park was, a huge series for me. And this rings of exactly like they stole the script from this, right? The exotic animal traders capture, lasso these dinosaurs and bring them to the city, and then they escape and to terrorize the town and destroy. Just such a great story. The finding of the bones in East Africa of the biggest Gigantosaurus yet known to scientists gives further weight to the statements of Brooks and Hagenbach that there are prehistoric monsters still in existence in Africa's swamps. It was a German expedition which found the remains, and after spending 2 years putting them together, the expedition announces it has assembled the most gigantic Gigantosaurus yet known to man. Charles Brooks, explorer, scientist, and hunter, says that some of the impenetrable swamps of northern Rhodesia along the southern border of the Sahara Desert may contain almost anything. The natives, he say, have told him that there are creatures in that region so big that they make elephants look like small cats. There is also Carl Hagenbach to bear testimony. The famous animal trainer and merchant astounded the scientific world by asserting in his book, Beasts and Men. We're going to do a whole episode on that book down the road. Let me know in the comments if you really like this material, and I'll kind of fast track it to the front of the line. And Africa had described to him a huge monster, half beast, half dragon, which inhabited these swamps. It would be very strange indeed if some such brute should be discovered alive today and thus lend corroboration to the medieval stories and legends of dragons. Did the people of the ancient world ever see any of these monsters? All of them, at any rate, have fables about them. China, from the time immemorial, let's zoom in a little bit more here, have used the fabled dragon as its symbol. The ancient Greek heroes slew dragons. The hoary sages of the Norsemen tell of dragons. Even the legends of the Christian saints are full of stories of these awful monsters. The myth of St. George and the dragon is perpetuated to this very day on the gold coin of England. Is it not possible that the awful, gigantic creatures, the bones of which are being dug up every now and then, are the dragons of old? One of the ancient names for America was Land of the Drake. And if you haven't seen my dragon found in Utah cave video, definitely go check that one out. Um, more evidence of this 150-foot dragon found below ground, the skeleton, wings and all. And fled in terror from the handed down their experience by word of mouth, experiences which later grew into fantastic tales of dragons. The Chinese, the Greeks, the Jews, the Norsemen, the Gauls, Britons, Romans, and Persians of the Dark Ages knew nothing of the bones of extinct monsters lying buried beneath the earth. Then whence came their conception of the dragon? It is entirely possible that these beasts and reptiles of millions of years ago survived to a later day than the geologists are willing to admit. Geologists aren't willing to admit a lot, and they keep finding a lot of these, right? And that men actually fought and slew them. As I've stated in the past, going along with the Atlantean narrative, especially put forward by Edgar Casey, that man was fighting giant beasts in the air, in the sea, and on the land. If such was the case, the memory of the tradition of such fearsome combats would linger in the mouths of men and be transmitted from father to son in story and song. Generation after generation, how else account for the almost universal belief in dragons that prevailed in comparatively recent days? It would not be so very strange if the hot swamps of Africa sheltered some descendants of these primeval monsters. These swamps are regions which resemble the prehistoric habitations of these monsters, which needed heat and water for their existence. These regions still resemble the worldwide forest of a million years ago. Now, another great connection here is that as many of my articles have been pointing towards a time frame where the entire world had the same warm, humid climate, and giant megafauna and animals were occupying all of these regions of Earth, from Alaska Alaska was tropical. The the fossil record proves it. Um, there are still gigantic tropical coral beds off the coast of Alaska, buried ancient cities all throughout these areas as well. And you're finding these bones in the same alluvial deposits as you're finding giant men and ancient construction. So, in my mind, and through a lot of my past material, it seems um, very much likely that man and beast were warring with one another. These swamps are regions which resemble the prehistoric habitations of these monsters, right? Right. These regions still resemble the worldwide forest, right? Like I was saying, if a million years ago, that's the misconception. It certainly wasn't a million years ago, I'll tell you that much. And that prehistoric man, as we call him today, was no caveman. There may have been, um, all these different tribes that had different levels of technology, but they definitely weren't all cavemen. The natives, by reason of the heat, the moisture, and the mephitic vapors which rise from the marshes. White men have never ventured to explore them. They are too dangerous because of the reptiles, insects, and disease. They are regions entirely suitable for the dragons of millions of years ago. Dragon is a very flexible word. It could mean many different sorts of animals. Exactly. This is like the dinosaur. Dinosaur was a term that comes from the Greek, and it just means terrible lizard, dragons. Okay, so there's a lot of falsehoods surrounding these dragons and our dragons, yes, and the what became known as dinosaurs, and many of these ancient skeletons have um, disappeared, and the ones you see today are predominantly fake. But the general idea of a dragon is a beast with a head like a rhinoceros, a hippopotamus, or a crocodile with a body of a great size, a tail like a crocodile, and claws like those of a lion or an eagle. Sometimes it had wings like a bat. Absolutely. This is very true. Sea monsters with horse heads. There was a lot of interesting intermingling of different types of animals. And the fossil record shows this, and even eyewitness accounts show this. The giant sea serpents that were still very, very common into the 1800s, predominantly the 1700s. But yeah, in a broad way, these legendary descriptions coincide with those the geologists give us of the bearers of the huge skeletons that we stared at in our museums. The bones of the dinosaurs, Brontosaurus, Diplodocus. I'm gonna mutilate these, so I apologize. Plesiosaurs, pterodactyls, megalosaurs, ichthyosaurs, and all the other giant animals whose names are as terrible as they themselves must have been. Explorer Brooks has written to the English government asking it to make a search for these creatures. Having seen the picture of the 8-foot Diplodocus, now in the Paris Museum of Natural History, it brings back to my mind many stories I heard from the natives and pygmies while hunting on the border of the Great Sahara Desert regarding monsters which are still in existence, he says. The animals were described as being so large that I ridiculed the idea and put it down as a stretch of the imagination. The natives were very anxious to be our guides, but I could not at the time bring myself to believe in or trust these creatures. Since seeing Carl Hagenbach's report of what had been heard from the same source, I am convinced that the monsters described are still in existence. My information points to the creatures being inhabitants of the surroundings of the lakes in the interior of the desert, that rhododendron swamps exist there as ample proof. The animals described to me are, first, one like an elephant, but of enormous size, the elephant appearing like a small cat by the side of the other. Now, if you haven't seen my giant prehistoric monster of Alaska, go back and watch that as well. They describe that creature in the same description, like an elephant, but makes an elephant look tiny. The second corresponds in every detail to the pictures one sees in the Bushman's caves throughout Africa of the unicorn. The third is what we conceive a dragon to be like. These monsters and many more monsters, which are supposed to be extinct, may still be discovered either in the marshes or in the desert. Carl Hagenbach quotes native runners as telling him of a creature in the swamps of Rhodesia that was a huge monster, half elephant, half dragon, which was a terror to all men by reason of its great size and swiftness. Another writer has also heard of these monsters. He submitted to the natives sketches of geological monsters, and correcting these as the natives suggested. At last he evolved a drawing which the natives agreed resembled the terrors of the swamps. It had the head and the tail of a crocodile, the horns of a rhinoceros, the neck of a python, and the body of a hippopotamus. It propelled itself with its flappers. It is interesting to compare this description with that of the supposedly extinct Brontosaurus, or Diplodocus, as given by Dr. W. D. Matthew of the Department of Paleontology in the American Museum of Natural History. It has, he says, a long flexible neck like that of the ostrich, a thick, short, slab-sided body, and straight, massive, post-like limbs, suggesting the elephant and a remarkably small head for the size of the beast. As for the specimen found and put together with the Berlin authorities, the like of which may still be found in the African swamps, Dr. Matthews gives a description of the creature and a suggestion of its life in the Scientific American. The Berlin authorities believe that the animal was amphibious, says Dr. Matthew. I have already advocated the view that these so-called amphibious dinosaurs were really entirely aquatic. Necessarily so because of their gigantic size, which would make it a physical impossibility for them to emerge entirely on dry land. As long as these animals were in the water, their weight could be largely buoyed up, and they would attain, like the living whales and various extinct sea monsters, a size that is impractical for a terrestrial animal. Now, again, as we get farther along here, we'll dive into some vapor canopy stuff. I've just been bombarded with people asking me to talk about the vapor canopy some more, or at least share articles. So um, that could be here that tomorrow, or maybe a few days down the road. We'll dive into some vapor canopy stuff. We'll talk more about giant trees, which I've done just about every episode of Anomalous America. Petrified animals. A lot of these giant reptiles that they're finding are petrified, and they're found all over the world. And if you haven't seen my Godzilla video, Godzilla found in Mongolia, they found a giant reptile that was 900 feet tall. And again, kind of what I was saying in the beginning, that they get these ideas for these movies and books and comics from old historical record. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's not from newspapers like these. Anyways, where was I? Terrestrial. Thus, too, they would be out of the reach of the great carnivorous dinosaurs of the land, against whose attacks they had apparently no such means of self-defense as the land dinosaurs possessed. The small head would be a big identifier that these are, vegetarian-based animals, not carnivorous. The larger head, larger jaw, larger skull lends to the fact that they're fighting creatures and they're eating meat. No such means of self-defense. It is, of course, obvious that they were adapted for wading at the bottom, not for swimming, although no doubt they could swim as well. According to this theory, the Giganosaurus acquired his huge forequarters and long neck in adaptation to living in deep waters than his relatives. Here he could wade about in the shallow waters, feeding upon luxuriant tropical vegetation that fringed the projected shores and retreating to deeper waters when attacked by the fierce carnivorous dinosaurs of the land. Now, I have many, many articles corroborating this type of animal. Lakes, inland seas, giant lakes that get cut off from the ocean. This brings up Loch Ness. Loch Ness was described in very similar dimensions. The loch got cut off from the ocean and the animal was stuck. And, as long as there was ample vegetation to feed on, the animal, survived. And a lot of these animals live, a lot of reptiles, even today, they just keep growing and growing and they can live for very, very long periods of time. And I would say, just like humans, living 3, 4, 5, 600 years, animals were doing the same in this pre fall of vapor canopy age. The radiation of the sun and so forth, many other things contributing to the shorter lifespans of the animals that inhabit the lands below it. After After death, the carcass would usually be more or less dismembered and pulled apart by fishes or aquatic carnivores before it drifted into a quiet spot and was buried in the slow accumulating mud. The subsequent geological ages, which piled successfully deposits of sand and clay above him and finally brought his remains again to the surface after millions of years of burial and slow petrifaction. Now, again, we've shown that these things can happen instantly. Surfaces and ocean bottoms can be brought to the surface in a day due to cataclysmic events, land risings and sinkings, earthquakes, so forth and so on. And petrifaction as well can happen in an instant. The various dinosaurs, terrestrial and aquatic, which were contemporaries, and the great variety of land and water life of his time became extinct, not only to be succeeded by another long period of evolution of new kinds of dinosaurs of even more extraordinary types, although none had attained the gigantic size of the sauropoda. Then these in turn disappeared, and the way was left clear for the evolution of the mammals or higher vertebrates into various types of living quadrupeds. And toward the end of this long period, in some region yet unexplored, the progenitors of man evolved from the monkey ancestry into culminating type of evolution. So again, chew the meat, spit out the bones. A lot of these articles, there are going to be lots of things that, unfortunately, they're holding on to narratives that I definitely don't agree with. But the juice is still there, and the overarching story is fantastic. And from here, we're going to pivot into another article that I shared many years ago that ties directly into this same area and time frame. This is from 1919, Washington, D.C. as well. London, December 16th, accompanied by Laddie, a German war dog whom he captured on the Western Front. Captain Lester Stevens will leave London on Christmas Eve for Central Africa in search of the Brontosaurus, a prehistoric monster for possession of which, according to the Daily Mail, the Smithsonian Institute offers $5 million. Now, the Smithsonian has been known from the beginning of its culmination to be offering bounties on a lot of things. Again, going backwards to my dragon found in Utah cave, the man who found it was paid off by the Smithsonian Institute to the tune of $50,000. Okay. And that was in like I can't remember the date, late 1800s. Now, here they are offering $5 million for this very same lizard dinosaur that they're describing in Africa, Central Africa. Laddie will be employed to find and follow the trail of the monster. The Brontosaurus was seen in the Congo recently by the Belgian explorers Capelli, Lepage, and others. Captain Stevens believes the reptile is hiding in the subterranean sea in Central Africa. Yeah, we'll get into this subject matter more, but he is taking with him a Mannlicher Schlodenhaller rifle, a Winchester repeater, a double-barreled shotgun, and a .45 caliber revolver. Walter Sinus, famous hunter of big game, who has had years of exploring experiences in Africa, is an enthusiastic believer in Stevens' mission, which he is backing. Fantastic, right? So, more corroborative evidence. And again, if you haven't seen some of my other Smithsonian articles, check those out. They were offering unbelievable amounts of money. I mean, $5 million in 1919 is a incredible sum. But yeah, so just wanted to share that one with you. I plan on doing a Smithsonian series down the road. Another good one to check out is the Smithsonian tearing down relics in Colorado. I have a short clip of that one on my channel as well. The governor of Colorado was pleading for help for the government because the Smithsonian agents were stealing mummies and tearing down ancient buildings and relics and shipping them to Europe. So, yeah, That'll all be included in the Smithsonian video. That again, I have a million different um, subjects I want to cover, and time's always the issue. But number one, thanks for being here. Thanks for watching my videos, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful day, guys. Bye.